Thank you so much for joining me here today on the Cut to the Deal podcast, where we talk about the business side of the industry. And we really try to answer one primary question, which is how can filmmakers make, produce, and distribute profitable films? And for that, there is, generally speaking, two levers. There is how can you get more sales, and that side is distribution and marketing. And then how can you bring your costs down? And on that second aspect, I think arguably there has never been something more powerful than AI to bring down the costs of film production, which is really the main topic today. So I'd love to get your thoughts today on AI, on how filmmakers can use AI in the film industry, on the ethical and moral dilemmas that might be there around AI, and really just get a sense of what your thoughts are on this topic. But perhaps to start off, could you give me a brief background of your sort of career history, both before and in the film industry?
Sure. Look, I'm really pleased to be here. This is the topic that's closest to my heart right now, particularly the ethics, and I'm really excited to get into that. So, look, I've been in the media industry for a long time. I started as an investment banker. Yeah, I was an idiot. I changed my life quite quickly after that. Retrained as a music producer, and I came up through the music industry until MP3 hit, and we got very excited about that technological change, and we launched a startup called People Sound, which was Europe's first big music site. This is before MySpace, a long time ago. And we rode that first .com wave, were able to sell the company after that. And then I went to film school, which is where I'd always wanted to go. And really since then, I've either been a writer-director or I've actually been attracted back into startups, typically when a technological change is happening. And I spent a good while as global head of innovation for EMI Records, where I was responsible also for Abbey Road and the EMI archive and working with some amazing artists. And my last startup actually was a second screen app called ZBox. People might remember the idea that you might interact on a second screen as you're watching TV. Turns out not to be a thing. It didn't stop us raising 40 million to try. And I come to this moment, I suppose, with two careers, jamming together. One being the excitement of startup, as I said, normally for me, driven by a technological change. And this change, AI, is such a big change that I want to, for the last 6 years, I've been thinking about how that's going to impact the film and TV industry, and then my writing and directing. And so New Forest is a company that we set up a few years back to understand how you can be successful in this new era, because things are about to change, and about to change so fast and so widely that you really need to think again about how to set yourself up for success. And that's the focus of our company.
Great. And for that, I mean, I think it's safe to say that most filmmakers and most people on the planet right now use AI in some shape or form. It's pretty difficult not to. So it'd be great to discuss, first of all, to give everyone the context of how you actually use AI in your company, to what extent you use AI.
Well, look, we're not shy of trying to use AI for anything, but we do have some principles that we think are really important. The first is that there is a human author. So we have a human at the beginning of the process. The creator is a human, hopefully an incredibly talented human. It could be a team of humans, but let's just call it a human. And then why? Because we're actually making for humans. At the end of the rainbow, there's humans. The simplest way of thinking about, the creative, the number of people you need to create something that is valuable is, well, there's got to be a creator and there's got to be an audience. That's the simplest thing. We want to make sure both of those are humans. Right. And I think, not to get into the ethics too early, but I think it's very important that that's the case. There are futures for us where content becomes utterly automated. And I think the consequences of that are, sometimes difficult to understand. But for us, we start with the human. That means actually humans write stuff in our world. They may use AI for research and other things, but we're not using AI to actually write scripts, write stories. We're not averse to the thought of it, certainly to help speed things up. But actually everything that we've worked on where we've used AI has been written by a screenwriter or a human. But we are very excited to use AI in the production, in the creation of video, creation of audio, 100% hybrid, VFX, wherever we think it can be used. And we also use AI in a particularly special way because we built our own AI to actually be able to test what we're creating on audiences. In other words, we've built AIs to simulate audience reaction incredibly accurately. This helps us make sure that what we're creating is definitely going to engage an audience, is definitely focused on the audience that we want to reach. And we're building AI to help us develop channels to distribute this content and manage those channels. So we use AI in many ways, but it's a human at the beginning of the process.
Okay, that's really interesting. On that last point of using AI to simulate audience reactions, can you expand on that a little bit? Is it essentially an
Yeah.
AI that you feed the video to that then gives you feedback on it, or?
Yeah. I mean, we a few years back, say 6 years ago, when we saw this AI wave coming, we put a bunch of people together in a room, technologists, writers, directors, actors, representatives of all the major departments. And for a year, we messed around. We tried to recreate the best kind of process that we thought would be relevant in the new AI era. This is before AI was capable of doing some of the things that we were imagining it could do. And we found a missing piece of the process that that there wasn't any technology for. And this led us to create this audience intelligence technology. When you think about the industry as it is today, it's primarily a B2B business. I mean, from the perspective of a creator, a writer, a director, you are a writer selling essentially to a producer, and a producer is selling on to Netflix. You're not touching your audience at all. Netflix is touching your audience. You're a long way away from the audience. If you compare that with the creator economy, they have a direct relationship with their audience. They post it online, they get likes, they don't get likes. And they might even comment and actually speak to their audience. We don't do this in the typical traditional film and TV industry. But we think that what's happening, and we can talk about this in more detail later, is really the film and TV industry is on a collision course with the creator economy, and it's going to be subsumed within the creator economy because AI. I'll talk about that in more detail in a bit. But when that's the case, you're now needing to operate much more closely to your audience. And I said before that, the simplest way of thinking about things as a creator and as an audience, really your task in the future is you have to find a match. Because if you create content and there's no audience, there's no value. So we knew that this was the critical problem to solve. And so we developed technology, and initially a massive data set, and then the data set that we could train on to create AIs that could very accurately simulate the reaction of real audiences to content, so that the creator had access to audience feedback at every stage of the development process, so that one-to-one match could be made. And we think that it's just, people don't work like this, right? I mean, you may go into a writer's room, but it's not like there's a writer in the room that represents the audience. Currently you're so far away. And actually, you never market your stuff. Someone else does that. Netflix gets the audience in. You don't even get any audience data back. You are a long, long way from optimizing for an audience. And so we knew this was a critical piece, so we built it.
That is really, really interesting, and perhaps we can touch upon that in a little bit more
Yeah.
in the rest of the episode. But to start off with, the biggest concern that filmmakers have is their careers, right? Everyone is scared that they won't have a job by the end of next year.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, everything that you said about audience and so on, it sounds like this is something that all producers are going to be extremely excited about, because you will still need a producer who's going to be, making that film, essentially producing it. But for all other jobs, like a focus puller or a makeup artist, or all of those jobs might become, obsolete. So what do you say to all the people who are scared about losing their jobs in the next year?
Yeah, no, I think it is scary. And, just one piece of context, this is not happening just in the film and TV industry, all right? This is happening to many, many jobs. And, if you listen to some people that believe in the world of abundance, that AI will bring in all jobs. So let's just put it in that context for 1 second. Look, people have learned skills over many, many years, and they have become incredibly proficient at all kinds of things in filmmaking. It's a very difficult, multifaceted industry when it comes to production. It's an army of people are necessary to create stuff. Some of that has already moved into the digital world in CGI and VFX and all of that kind of stuff. It looks like, if we were to predict which of the kinds of roles that are going to be threatened more, it would be the digital roles initially, right? But gradually, yes, many roles in the production of content are going to be made obsolete. We have to face the fact that that's true. There will, no doubt, some people will continue to work in traditional ways. But what you said at the beginning is very true, which is that if it's cheaper to make it a different way, there's no way on earth that Hollywood won't do that. If you have a chance to make content cheaper, it will be made. And if you don't make it cheaper, someone else will make it cheaper. And then we're in the world of perfect competition, and everyone can, at some point when the cost comes down very, very low, anyone can make it. And it will be the case. So I think the way to think about it is this. I keep coming back to creator and audience. The closer you can be to being a creator in the industry, the more chance that you're going to have of having a career. So you may be a cinematographer right now, right? You may be a VFX artist right now. You may be any role, an actor, any role in the industry. Please become a creator. Start becoming a creator. Don't make other people's stuff, right? Make your stuff, right? Become the creator. So I think that's true, and there's nothing wrong with continuing your career in the traditional way. I mean, you make money every day doing this, and you must do it. But you must face facts that it's going to be more and more difficult to get those jobs in the coming years, and the change could come much faster than many people think. We're talking massive change within 5 years, possibly massive change within 3 years. So you really need to start thinking about, if you want to be in this industry, what part of the industry is going to be safe, and to some extent, nowhere safe, of course. But the safer position to be in is if you're the person that's responsible for it. If you've got ideas, if you can group up with some people to actually come up with a story, actually, at the end of the day, that's where the value is going to lie. The value is going to lie less and less in the actual production.
Yeah, and I think it's also true to say that even though we have made, in the industry over the last 50 years or so, there's been a lot of technological advancements which have made, making movies cheaper. The more expensive ways are still there. Meaning, yes, you can shoot a phone, you can shoot a film on a phone right now, or an iPhone, or on a digital camera, but people still shoot films on film because they want to, and because there's still an audience for it. So I think even if in 5 years' time we're making all films fully with AI, there's still going to be a 10% of an audience for films where they don't want to see AI generated films. They want to see films with real
human. But let's be careful about what we mean by AI generated, right? Because human made, but you're using AI in the production is not quite the same as AI generated. Because we're not saying the entire thing is AI generated. We're saying it comes from a human who's using it and the tools to create it. And I'd like to maybe jump into this point just for a moment, which is, I came up through the music industry. So the music industry typically experiences these changes before the film and television industry, these technological changes. And I think it's really instructive to think about this from the perspective of the technologies that changed the music industry creatively. So MP3 did from a distribution point of view, streaming did from a distribution point of view. But actually, it was the late 70s, early 80s, where the synthesizer and the sampler completely creatively changed the music industry. They basically enabled the idea of a bedroom DJ to exist. It basically meant that, fundamentally meant that voices that had never been heard before could be heard, and hip hop became not just, a Black American genre, but it spread entirely across the world with people telling their stories from quite often disadvantaged communities, by remixing, funk and remixing records that already existed and adding their spin. But the synthesizer was maybe even more revolutionary, because what it actually did was enable you to synthesize any sound you wanted, including sounds we'd never heard before with Kraftwerk and those early pioneers. And there isn't a record, hardly, in the charts that doesn't use a synthesizer. And we're very familiar to see, LCD Sound System has a dude at the back, and more than one, and they're playing the keys, but they're playing synthesized sounds, right? These are not real sounds, right? And I think you can think about AI in video and sound generation like this. You can think of it as a remix tool. And a lot of people think of it only as a remix tool. They seem to think that the way these models are working is somehow they've got all the colors of the rainbow, and they can remix a little bit of Back to the Future and a little bit of All the President's Men, or whatever that film's called, and and create something. And they think, oh, that's you're borrowing those two copyrights. It's not actually how it works. They're learning physics, they're learning human behavior, they're learning the world so that they can recreate it. We're not literally stealing this from this. We can ask it to create Superman, and it will create Superman because it's seen a lot of Superman, but that's copyright. We're not. These models are learning, and we don't have a thing called learn right. There's no such thing. There's no copyright on learning. I don't think there should be. I think that would be bad for the world. We shouldn't stop learning. You don't have to pay someone to learn something. But that's remix. But in synthesis, I think that this is where the excitement comes. And actually people are starting to call, the artists in AI filmmaking are starting to call their version of cinematography synthography, right? They have all the craft of cinematographers. They have the eye. They know exactly what they want, and they're using AI to do that, just as they would with a camera team or a camera of their own, which of course is a technology in its own right, So, but I think that the thing that's interesting is that what happened with the synthesizer is we got dance music, electronic dance music, and a million new genres that had never existed before. There's so many dance genres. And what's going to happen in our industry is we're going to get whatever the new genres are that synthography and the synthesizer analogy can give us is coming. I'm immensely excited about it, and all those unheard voices that the hip hop and the remix culture gave us, we're just about to get them too. And no one thinks of a hip hop artist as not being an artist, and no one thinks of Sweet Dreams with Annie Lennox, and Eurythmics, a very classic early kind of synthesized record, as not being a great piece of music made by artists.
But I
think
that
we're gonna have this revolution, and it will be human led. But yes, they'll be using AI tools, but they're remix and synthesizer tools. That we've had this for years. It's the same thing.
I think there's one big distinction between AI and all the other technological advancements that came before that, which is that with AI, the promise is that eventually you won't need humans at all, right?
Yes.
That you'll, and for that, I want to ask a question kind of from the other side of the argument, pushing it even further. You mentioned that your company is making films using AI, but it's human-led. Why do you think that that's important? Because you're saying that, you write scripts without the use of AI, you might do research and so on, but in the future, when you can tell AI, just make a film and make it awesome, and that is the only prompt you need to give it, and it will do something far better than what you might ever create yourself. Why do you think we need to make things that are human-led?
Yeah, I'm gonna tackle this from an ethical and a commercial point of view. Maybe I'll go commercial first. Look, I think there are lessons from the creator economy where we're heading as an industry. And that is that, there is a Mr. Beast, right? There is a KSI. There is a person right there. And they are someone that you could look up to, admire, someone that you might want to be, someone you could possibly meet, could see him on the red carpet or, see him walking down the road. And I think we know that this humanity has been the driving force of the creator economy. This is another industry, by the way, that is being created because of the democratization or the cost reduction of content production. The iPhone enabled, that entire industry to exist because we can present to the phone, the costs are very cheap, and actually we can create compelling stuff. But it was humans that did it. We love those humans that did it. And I think this is going to be true for our industry as well. I think commercially, audiences will want to know that this is human authored. And I actually think that in any event, it has to touch you as a human. The content, it has to make you feel something, it has to make you think something, and it's about human connection. And yes, we might use tools to help us connect better, but I think it's a human to human thing that people will want to know is true. So I think that's maybe it's ethical, but I think that's what the audience wants, right?
Well, the opposing argument to that is the rise of AI influencers, because you have AI influencers that have millions of followers on TikTok that people love as if they're humans.
Yeah, and this is of course is a slippery slope. Where does it go? That kind of thought process. Well, certainly it's going to be possible to create content on a whim with a tiny amount of input, and it's entirely possible that an AI would be able to make that indistinguishable from reality or indistinguishable from a human authored content, and let's just say in some sense better. So I think at the end of that rainbow, it leads to utterly personalized content, right? So the possibility of making a version of Dune that's exactly right for me, or a completely new sci-fi that's exactly right for me, and possibly not exactly right for anybody else but me. And I think that's going to be incredibly addictive for many people. I think it's going to be very difficult to resist. Now, I might say at that point, when we get to that stage, that there still is a creator and an audience. It just so happens that they're the same person. The creator is me. It's my needs, my wants, my personality, my psychology, me. And the AI might know that about me, everything about me. And I'm the audience too. Right. So I will go back to the beginning saying, yeah, I'm kind of okay with this because there's a human at both ends. Right. In between, when I don't know where this started, I don't know that there's a human. I don't know what the intentions were for the creation of this content, and that it may have come out of a factory, as it were. A data center factory. I think people will ultimately get the ick, and I think that we will. Whilst there'll be a subset of people that will fall for this, and they will be, find it interesting to have a content that's cool but not human authored. I think that actually it's likely not to be good for society, and it's likely it will be restricted. That's my sense.
Yeah. I mean, we already see certain streaming platforms and distributors and so on restricting AI content. Tubi is an example of this.
Because it will take everything else over, right? Because, ultimately, if someone can create infinite content, which, soon they will be able to, all standard human discourse will be flooded. And you will not know in that system which, whether it's made with AI or made with humans. And so I think ultimately you have to restrict it because otherwise everyone's overwhelmed with infinite content. So I suspect that that's the way it's going to go. Otherwise, literally human society falls apart because nobody can cope with that much, being overwhelmed with so much content, so personalized, and the speed at which it will come at you will be impossible for a human brain to perceive. It's that kind of. So I think it will be restricted, and I think we will we will settle down to a human authored world. And, we may have experiences every now and again that are completely personalized for ourselves. But I think ultimately that's where it goes, because we can't deal with an infinitely automated content world as a society or as individuals. It is not possible. So it has to be restricted. That's my sense. I mean, but this is I don't know how far ahead what we've just said is. I mean, is this 5 years, 10 years, 3 years? I'm not actually quite sure. And we start seeing people making. I mean, I know there are people raising to make. So you have an AI buddy who's maybe goes through your life, and maybe they're even going to star in films that you're going to watch. Or there's a slippery slope also between a relationship with a fake, let's just call it for the moment, person or personality in your daily life, leaking into a kind of story-driven life, and that reduction of truth and reality being kind of gradually slipping away. And we're going to have to do stuff. I mean, many people are warning about this. We have to declare, I think, when something's made with AI. We have to know whether it's true or not true. And we have to declare when something's completely authored with AI, or when it's not completely authored with AI. I think those two distinctions are incredibly important.
There's two things that I want to talk about based off of that. The first one being, I think what's so difficult in terms of restricting AI is that if a country restricts it and another one doesn't, that country will start to fall behind. And this is what's been so difficult in terms of trying to restrict AI in any country whatsoever, and why governments have been so apprehensive to restrict AI. So how can we do that unless we do it on a global scale, which is going to be impossible?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is the geopolitical problem in the base of this, this set of things ahead of us, because US certainly sees this as a global geopolitical imperative that America has the best AI. And if there's anything that will restrict that progress, at least from a Trumpian point of view, and possibly from an American point of view generally, actually, they will remove it. And then, of course, in our world, that comes down to not enforcing copyright in training for the sake of argument, and other clearly other areas of AI use as well. So yeah, that from our perspective, from the rest of humanity's perspective, it looks like an unstoppable train, and I think it probably is. And of course, the EU have, I think, pretty much the only large-scale set of AI regulations in the world, but they're already delaying them. They're already not implementing them. They're already realizing that it could put Europe behind. Do we have any leverage in Europe against China and the US to try and say, hold on, guys, slow down. Slow down. There's a safety issue. It's a global safety issue, and slow down. There's a societal change issue. And EU, is obviously been responsible, or felt itself responsible for being the adult in the room from that perspective. But undoubtedly, it will take things being broken before people will start to, as ever, start to be more cautious. The Sam Altman kind of way of working is release it, see what happens, and then pull back a little bit. There's an awful lot of talk right now about the power of AI to become the latest AIs to become incredible hack engines to hack anything, and that will bring kind of problems for the world. So yeah, I mean, I think the reality is it from a geopolitical point of view, it feels like an unstoppable train. And I think it is, but the moment things get hairy, we hopefully we have the wherewithal to pull back a bit and to invent those new laws or restrictions that we need. I think from our point of view, the most important is the declaration of whether AI is used or not, and whether it's human authored or not. I think this is important not just for our industry, but it's important for the concept of truth in pictures, truth in video. We need to have that, because otherwise society gets very difficult.
And I think truth is the other thing that I wanted to speak about, because when we talk about hyper-personalization, right, even before AI, via social media, that your feed is personalized to you, what we've seen was that suddenly made truth turn into your truth. Right.
Yeah.
It is now suddenly you believe what you believe because you are shown the content, and even more and more and more content of what you already believe. Therefore, you believe that that's the only truth there is out there.
Yeah.
And I think you acknowledge that there is such a thing as too much content. But do you think we need more content than we already have?
That's a good question, but let me come up. I'm going to answer it, but I want to talk about this, the problem of hyper-personalized content before we talk about that. So, look, I think hyper-personalized. Well, look, we've had it for a while. Okay, so the ability for TikTok to suck people in is astonishing, right? It really is astonishing. And many people will go, well, no, it's it's a series of funny or interesting or sexy, whatever it is you're interested in videos, one after the other. It's a dopamine hit. It's endless, and I'm just gonna, it's gonna suck me in for the rest of my evening. And I think this is true, but I also think that the reason why it's able to continue to gain my interest is because there's so much content that it can choose from as an algorithm. There's so much. 48 movies or so get released every day globally currently. 10 million videos get uploaded to TikTok. It's probably more now. 20 million, in the same day, right? That algorithm has much more to choose from. And every person has different needs or wants, depending on how you look at your life. And so everyone will have a different feed, and this has been going on for, decades now. In all kinds of social media, algorithms has been feeding stuff that makes our worlds more personalized and feeds us facts or semi-facts or, adjusted facts that we believe in or we come to believe in. And people will blame polarized politics around the world on this, but in general, what's happening is we are becoming atomized. We are, you can see the direction of travel. The direction of travel is smaller and smaller groups with their own kind of truth. And of course, at some point in the future, that's just one of you with your one truth and your one world. That's where it's going. You're absolutely right. So if all of the content that humans are creating right now, predominantly, not only, is giving these algorithms the better chance of being more optimized for each person, well, infinite content will do that infinitely. So yes, we're that is the direction of travel, and that's the way it's going to go. Now, what do you do we think there's too much content now? Because I heard you say that. Is there too much content now? Actually, we've done a lot of research on this, and I'm just going to use the context of Netflix, right? So Netflix has about 30,000 titles on there, right? You would never know that. It's very difficult to get at their 30,000 titles. And most people are almost undoubtedly going to be choosing something from the top 10. It's going to be that simple for most people. If you do go looking in Netflix, you scroll down and you have those evenings. I don't know what to watch. I can't decide what to watch. Oh, I'll just go back to TikTok, which, by the way, is what everybody is doing because the audience is leaking away from Netflix and it's going to YouTube and TikTok and other open platforms in spades in every generation. Netflix is almost undoubtedly has right now lost Gen Alpha and Gen Z. That's not where they are. They're not on Netflix. Occasionally they are, and they get pulled back from TikTok as some cool thing from Wednesday, and they go and watch Wednesday or whatever. But that's not what's, they're going away. But when you do the research and ask the question, well, why is this? It's not that there's too much content in film and TV. That isn't actually the issue. The issue is there's not enough. The reason you can't find what to watch is there's nothing that's obviously good for you right now. Let's say you're interested in Dune or something like, a big, super high-end sci-fi. It comes along every 5 years. there is nowhere near enough Dune stuff, even just in the Dune world, probably to service the people that like that stuff. And actually, there's a slightly more action version of Dune and a slightly more cerebral version of Dune that two different people would prefer, right? And that's actually what people, I would say, want and need. And the industry cannot cope. Everything it makes right now, because it costs so much, is blunt. It's blunt because if you're spending 100 million making something, you have to have an audience of this size. An audience of that size actually has quite a lot of different wants and needs, and you have to balance them out and create something for those kind of people. And that's why we have these horrible, superhero movies. I mean, this year, Fantastic Four and Superman, they are dreadful movies. They are so bland. They are so not even honest to the origins of those characters. And they are just, the industry is killing itself because it's blandifying itself. And we see this everywhere. So yeah, there's actually not enough. And we go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation. AI will enable more to exist, all the way to infinity, I know. But I think in between now and infinity, I feel like there's an enormous opportunity for creators to make stuff, to make more stuff as an individual, to make more of my stories. But for an audience also to get more stories that are better for me, more specific from voices I've never heard before, produced in ways I've never seen before, particularly in animation. I don't know, we can probably name like 10 animation styles that the Hollywood studios and the big studios have created over the last, 20 years, 10 styles, But animation, my God, anything's possible. There's like 1,000, 10,000 styles, 1,000,000 styles out there that we can enjoy. And we're just about to get that, either as a creator or as an audience. This is maybe where the new dance music genres come from. There's visually, it's going to be far more exciting than it was before. And I think, yes, I would prefer a degree of more specificity to my needs. I would prefer less bluntness from the industry. And I think that the industry's averaged itself across very large audiences. I don't like that. I mean, I just want really cool stuff that I love. And I think that the audience wants that. And ultimately, I think the creators want that too. They don't want to have some executive tell them, no, you can't swear. No, you can't do it like that because that kind of joke won't land with that audience, etc. You don't want that. You don't want those notes. You want to create something that's as cool as it can be.
I wonder whether, I'm not sure if this is the perfect metaphor for it, but I wonder whether more content is what we want, but not necessarily what we need. And I wonder if we want more content in the same way that we used to want fast food because it's you get it faster and it tastes really good, but actually in the long term it's bad for you. Because the opposing side of the argument is, back in the days, there would be one film that would come out that month and everyone would go to the cinema and everyone would, as a community, watch that one film. And then at work the next day, everyone would talk about that film. And there was this real sense of community. And that's the big thing that's disappearing, which is people are no longer in communities. They're living isolated. They're watching shows that none of their friends are watching. And to an extent, you already don't have conversations. You don't have people to talk to about those shows unless it's on social media with people that you no longer even know if they're real or if they're bots.
Yeah.
And so
I think
I
think this is legitimate. I mean, look, let's first talk about the difference in wants and needs, right? We can do this like in story terms. We know the story. The character arrives at the beginning and, some inciting incident happens and then they dash off, guided by their wants. They want to save the world. They want to get the girl. They want whatever it is that they want. Like halfway through, they start to realize, hold on a second, maybe, or someone helps them understand, maybe what I want isn't actually this, because we've already seen what they need, which is, dude, you don't need to save the world. You just need to look after your family. That's what you need to do. And then, the outcome of the story is whether their wants overrides their needs, and maybe this is more of a tragedy, or whether they oh yeah, shit, I need to change. Yeah, I need to go after the thing I really need. This is story. That's basically all stories, is what I just described, and the change is moving from wants to needs. So our AI intelligence is not based on audience wants. It's based on audience needs. This is an important distinction. I'm not going to go into this full psychology of it right now, but we think, we want to serve people's needs, not what their wants are. And actually, a need could be two things. A need could be, I actually don't want that much content. That could be a need, an actual need. And because I've got other things to do in my life, I only want the best content. I don't want to have to sit and watch this rubbish content, but it has to be really good. That's one kind of way of thinking about needs. It's restricted. But the other way of thinking about needs is that it's exactly the kind of thing that other people would enjoy too, and I can actually go and talk about this with other people. So yes, and look, let's just go back to evolutionary psychology just for a minute, right? If you just think about the success of humans, on the one hand, we've been incredibly selfish. Our genes want to survive and will procreate and will, they guide us to procreate because they want to survive. Our genes, that's the selfish gene kind of argument. But also, we needed to group up because otherwise we couldn't take down the mammoths or build, villages and societies and farms and whatever else. And, so we're good at both of these things. We're very selfish, but we're also, very social. And it's been the success of humanity. I think in most people, they need a bit of both, and let's just imagine it's 50-50. Right. I need sometimes to be a bit selfish. It's me time. And, other times I need to look after my kids and converse with my friends and, be social. I think in most people, they feel the pull in different directions at different times in their lives. I don't think that goes away. It's in our genes and we can't stop wanting to be social with other people. So it's not going to go away. But, there's no doubt that you could say, well, hold on, you could be social with other AI people, not real people, and you're still satisfying your genes. And we get into a completely new ethical world of whether that's a legitimate way to spend your life. I mean, you would, you could disappear into a world and, avatar style we've seen a million movies where this happens. And, is that cool or is that not cool? Is Matrix cool? I mean, maybe in the future it will be for some people, but I think it's important to think about needs. I think once sure. And I do think that probably the algorithms of TikTok are much more in the wants realm, but for us as a company, it's much more about human needs. And that's what we're optimized for because we think that's what actually matters.
Yeah, because I think the problem commercially with that is once get people hooked, once get people watching, it gets people buying, it gets people doing things. Needs is a more of a long-term thing that people don't necessarily know that they need something.
That's right.
Whereas the wants,
but we want to be in that business, right? So I think this is where the ethics comes in as you start, your creative journey, even all the way back down. When you're thinking, what story shall I write? What kind of story should I write? Right. And many people, I think, fall into the trap of thinking about what people want or what the industry wants or whatever else. And they know that they're doing it. This kind of thing I'll get the money for. This kind of thing I will, I've seen has been successful before. This is the kind of thing that people like me normally make first before I get to make my really cool thing that is more bespoke. Everyone makes that mistake. I can see why, because it gets you on the gravy train and it gets you a gig and everything else. But I think you as humans have responsibilities to tell good stories, right?
Mm.
I'm going to tell you a dark story right now, and I think it's really important if you're considering writing stories. This is the lesson that I learned, right? My first short film after film school was very autobiographical. And it featured a kind of version of me growing up in Scotland. I was an English kid growing up in Scotland in the 1970s and not having such a good time. The kids would play this game called How Do You Want to Die in my short film as a game we used to play. Someone stands on a mound and the other kids say, how do you want to die? And you say, bow and arrow. And they pretend to shoot you with a bow and arrow and you do the best death you can possibly do. Or they say nuclear bomb because they always say nuclear bomb and then you try and blow yourself up. That was the game. And this kid wasn't having such a good time with these kids and he wanted to do the best ever kind of joke on them and he pretended to hang himself. And they came across his apparently dead body and then he jumped up and scared the shit out of them and their friends again. That all seemed like a really cool story to me. It seemed to be the kind of thing that I thought I might have done possibly when I was 10 years old, didn't do, but almost might have done. And it just felt like a really cool story to me. I showed this story and it went down really well. People seemed to like the film. I filmed it in my old school. And then, this is a dark story, I'm warning everyone right now. And then a few months after that, not one of the kids in the movie, but a friend of theirs was found dead in the woods. And the immediate thought was that he had seen my film or been involved in my film and had hanged himself in the woods or killed himself in the woods. And I can't tell you, I mean, I was just I was destroyed by this. It was just like, what have I done? What have I done? Why did I do that? Why didn't I even think about that when I made this story? You know, it turns out it had nothing to do with my film, and it was a horrible story about some guy that had taken the kid off to school. I told you it was dark, horrible. But it taught me a very deep lesson, and I think everybody that's making stories needs to learn this lesson, which is it's up to you what story you make. You know, if you want to make a story for someone's wants, go ahead. But, you know, that's what you're feeding into the world. You know, if you want to make a story that's best for people's needs, I think better. I think you should do that. And I think that the democratization that AI will provide us will enable you to do that and find your audience that is really meaningful and great for society, and that your story has ethics. You know, you actually what happens in this story is ethically correct from your point of view. You know, it's not just dopamine. It's not just action. It's not just because that will enable me to get to the next step in my career. Take it seriously as a story. You know, how do I want to change the world for the better, or in the way that I want it to be changed? And make sure you have that opinion when you're writing a story. Because story is ethics. I don't think it actually isn't not ethics. It is ethics. And that's where we have this rule. You know, there's a human author and we're making something to serve human needs. And I think you have to go into this new world with that in mind. That authenticity is important. Otherwise, I think you're going to fall foul of the algorithm. And like many creators, you know, they chase the algorithm and they find themselves doing all kinds of crazy shit because they get likes. Do you want to do that? Is that how you want to live your life? Is that the way what you want to put out into the world? So yeah, I think, I mean, maybe what this conversation is kind of getting to is the responsibility that you have in this new era to actually do good in you know, from your point of view, and not to chase the money. And we have an opportunity to do that as individual creators. Very difficult in this industry as it is today, because there's so many other people involved and they've got so much more money and power than you, and they're desperate for the $100 million thing to work. That, you know, all kinds of ethical boundaries are overridden. But you don't have to do that, you know, and we won't in our company.
Interesting. And I want to move on in a moment to how you actually use AI, and therefore how other filmmakers can use AI from a technical point of view. But before we move on to that, you know, you've been quite vocal about using AI on LinkedIn, social media platforms, and so on. Is there anything else that you want to discuss from an ethical point of view? You know, other concerns that you've heard from filmmakers that you'd like to address?
God, there's so many, you know, but we should address the climate, right? So this is an interesting debate, and I don't think it's finalized yet. But our analysis suggests that if we were to make, and this is, I keep saying sci-fi, but sci-fis are expensive, so it's a useful kind of place to start. If you were to try and if you could create a sci-fi as credible as Dune today with AI, and we're not quite there. I'm guessing within a year. I know that might sound scary to people, but I'm guessing within a year. But then I said a year last year, so you know, take what I say with a pinch of salt. But let's say we're there. It would be far better for the environment to make Dune with AI, because making Dune for real is horrific for the environment. Right? All those sets, you know, that are built for a few days and thrown away and painted by, you know, hundreds of people, thousands of people. The travel costs, even just the sustenance for all the people on the set. Just in fact, all the people working on it is you know, that's horrific for the environment. creating similar shots with AI is orders of magnitude better for the environment. So the issue, though, comes that as we democratize video creation, more video is being created overall. And so the balance that we have to figure out is, okay, so fine. So actually, a professional set of people, professional creators making a Dune with AI is going to be better for the environment. But there's going to be a whole lot of rubbish tunes made by rubbish people that sit in data centers that no one's ever really going to watch in this infinite content world. And that's where the issue is going to be. There's already too many family photos, right? I mean, they sit on data centers, when no one sees them, and they're sitting there forevermore, larger and larger data centers, larger and larger, cloud storage, and this is going to exponentially increase. But per shot, in your world, per shot, your film, it is cheaper, is better for the environment. It's not just cheaper, it's better for the environment to do it like that. So that's one ethical concern I think is important for us to work through. I think that it's not exactly ethical. Maybe it is. But, I see people say, look, this is slop. This is lazy. This is cheap, right? I see these kinds of things thrown. Cheap is bad for some reason. It's like, no, I want you to spend money. I need you to spend money, right? And therefore I'll think it's good. I think that's just false. I mean, that's just not ethically, useful. I mean, I don't care if it's cheap. The question is it good, right? Is it, the idea that everything made with AI is slop, which you see a lot of people say, is untrue, but there's a lot of slop. I mean, there's a lot of lazy rubbish, even amongst some people that purport to be, named AI creators, and they big up their projects, and it's just another kind of slightly icky sci-fi thing and a slightly not quite right thing. And they're like, oh, it's the first major film with major creators. It just, I wish people would just, be honest with themselves about where it's at. So there is a lot of slop, even amongst the, the top creators. But amongst all of that, there's some real golden stuff, some stuff that absolutely people love. That's the stuff that we want to make as a company. Lazy, it's not. They can be lazy, but if you want to make something good, you got to write a story. Then you've got to produce the story. Anyone has actually tried with AI to make something exactly what they want, not what AI wants, by the way, what you want. It's tough. I stay up to, I've been working for maybe 6 weeks almost straight through every weekend. I'm up to like 2 a.m. most days, learning, experimenting, creating stuff. I work harder now in AI production than I've ever done in physical film production. It's tough, it's going to get easier, but even when it's easy, to make it exactly how you wanted it. But now you forget how much compromise there is in traditional filmmaking. You forget about it because you're on the set and, you've got the cameraman you've got, and you've got the actors you've got, and you've got the budget you've got, and it's all compromise. Everywhere, like even the conversation you have with these different people, and you're a director and you're trying to get the best out of the actor, but maybe they can't actually get there, but you kind of turn a blind eye to it, or maybe you're wrong and you're not a very good director, but you turn a blind eye to it, and it's nowhere near as good as you imagine it would be at the beginning of the process. And you could talk to any director or writer, and it's all true, and so we forget that there's no perfect process here. What AI does is it possibly gives us the opportunity to actually make it more perfect, more exactly what I wanted. Not quite yet, but it will get to that point. But that's going to be no less work. And if it all comes down to your creative spark, your creative energy, and your creative authenticity and distinctiveness, that's never going to go away. And it's always going to be difficult to translate something from here, to get it out there. So it's not easy. Even when production is easier with AI, it's still not going to be easy from the perspective of a creator. It's always going to be difficult to tell a great story that people love. It's always going to be difficult.
Yeah. And I think that's a great segue to the next topic, which is most filmmakers still don't know how to actually use AI. And there is, I teach a lot of filmmakers on how to make profitable films, and not starts off with, when you're making your first film, don't make a film for 10 million. You'll never make that money back.
Right.
Make a really low budget film, make it in a marketable genre and something that you love and an audience that you can tap into and so on. So for all the filmmakers who are currently listening, who are currently in the process of thinking, how can I make a really cost efficient horror film or sci-fi film or something that actually has the possibility to potentially make its money back, so that I can use that as a calling card, that I can make profitable films to make bigger films, who have no idea how to use AI. Can you give them a sort of brief overview of the process that you use from writing to release, where you
Yeah,
use AI
understood.
and what kind of technical aspects or what kind of software you use and so on?
So let's split it into two things. Let's split it into the creation and production process, and then the distribution and making money process. Right. So we'll
Okay.
talk about these separately, although I think they're going to be more and more intertwined in the future because we're entering the creator economy. So on one level, it's incredibly easy for me to describe to you how to make a movie with AI, because we could think about it like this. You write a story. If you want to use AI to write that story, go ahead, but they're all pretty crap right now. That anyone that's tried to do that, it will get better. But you write a story. That story better be good, right? If it's not good, you're all lost, right? And also, it needs to be achievable in AI right now. You can't achieve everything. So there is a bit of a circular process here in understanding what is absolutely possible. And I think there's a real mistake in the writing process I see a lot of people making, which comes from the old industry. It comes from the legacy industry, which is perfect the script and then make the script. This is a classic waterfall, process. It's not a good process. Agile process is a circular. We create something, we test it, we adjust it, and we adjust it, and we keep going around in a circle. So I think you need to learn to be more iterative in your processes, more circular and iterative, test and learn. But anyway, we have a script at some point, or we're developing the script as we go along. Ultimately, what is a film? It's a series of shots, stuck together, strung together, right? That's all it is. So we can create an individual still frame for a shot with many different tools, and Midjourney is still my favorite to do this. So I would start by saying, get good at Midjourney, figure out how to create the aesthetic and the characters and everything that you want in Midjourney. And then what's happened recently to manipulate those cool images to get different camera angles, and to get the same character in many other shots that you're creating, pretty much Nano Banana Pro has become the default way of doing that. So you create an image, but I need this pair of people from several different angles, or I need this person in a different situation. We're going to use Nano Banana Pro to do that, right? Midjourney is a bit tougher to learn than Nano Banana Pro. There's lots of techniques. Nano Banana Pro is incredible because you can just put an image in and say, I'd like to do this to it. I mean, it's simple, and you can experiment and you can learn all kind of prompting strategies, but ultimately it's natural language. Midjourney is meant to be natural language, but there are a lot more tricks. And then once I've got my image or set of images that form a scene, all I need to do is find the right AI to bring that alive, to actually animate that shot. And so it's entirely possible to make a really incredible movie or short film or ad with those three tools. Midjourney, Nano Banana Pro, and if you want to make people talk, probably still the best model is VO 3.1. Kling has launched a new model recently which enables people to talk very credibly. What I mean by this is that the dialogue is produced at the same time as the action, and actually potentially music and sound design at the same time. So the simplest way of thinking about it is write a story, make images for every shot, use Nano Banana Pro to get the shot angles, and animate it with the VO 3.1. And you can learn how to do this in a weekend. This is not difficult. There's a load of YouTube channels that will teach you if you need to go deeper. And if not, ask ChatGPT and Gemini and they'll teach you too. The issue about starting with AI and where it's going is it's going to get easier and easier every day from now to the rest of our lives. Yes, you need to get over the hump of not having done it, and you need to throw yourself in. But we're seeing democratization in action. This is this is not. Oh, boss, sorry, you need to take it into Adobe Premiere or whatever at the end and edit it together. Okay, fine. So you need those skills as well. But these are not. I don't think these are particularly difficult skills. The skill that's more difficult is writing a good story, knowing when that character image is really cool, set is really cool, and knowing when the performance of the character is good enough, and the whole and editing together so it feels like it's really it's something that's compelling and will get people's attention and engage them. That's the actual skill that's difficult. The production skill isn't difficult at all. Many other people will tell you different. They'll try and get you to do their course, and and there's some courses to go on. Curious Refuge run a course, and they'll get you into the basics of the processes that are used, and you can get into open source models where you're training your own models, or all kinds of Comfy UI is a way to manipulate all kinds of open source models to do specific things that you want to do. But let's just keep it simple. If you're going to start somewhere, you're going to start with Midjourney, Nano, Banana Pro, and VO 3.1, and you're going to be able to make a short film within a week. I mean, if you've got any talent, you should be able to.
That's really interesting. And what about for filmmakers that, because this sounds like a process for making a film sort of where the whole film is AI generated in a sense. What about mixing? If you want to create a hybrid, you want to create something with real life actors, but you just want to make it more cost efficient. Is that something that
totally.
you've been doing as well?
Yeah, of course. And gosh, I watched television. I can't remember the show I was watching the other day. New show. And the house had to be on fire. There was an explosion or whatever. The house was on fire. It was, you could see it was terrible. I mean, it was just awful CGI or overlaid flames. It was just awful. They clearly ran out of money or got the wrong agency or whatever the hell that they did. It was dreadful. You could shoot the same scene, and with AI, you could put those flames on in a far more convincing way, and then have the house completely destroyed. So one of the obvious and easy places to think about using AI is in VFX on any standard shoot. It's never going to do everything that we can do today. Not quite yet. Sorry, not never. Not today. It doesn't do everything that you want it to do, but it can do many, many things. And with some experimentation of knowing what's possible, you can adjust your script accordingly. So yes, you're going to save a lot of money in that way. You can do exactly the same thing as I described to your own shot as you could with a Midjourney still. So you could go, instead of, I don't know, let's say you need a drone shot or something that starts on the ground and goes up very high. Well, you could go to that location, you could take a still and then go home and then say, hey, I need a drone shot that goes up from this and looks down. And I can do that. I don't need no drone, and so there's a whole load of different kinds of shots that you could take with the actual camera, the actual lens, or the that you were using for the rest of your shoot. But then you could make that shot do whatever you wanted, or something that would be too expensive or creatively you couldn't achieve without AI. You can absolutely do that. Where it comes to, I look at Marvel movies like, say, Black Panther. And people love that film, and it's a great film. There's nothing, I'm not disparaging that film. But, when he's jumping from car to car, you might remember that scene. It doesn't actually look like it. It doesn't actually look real. It doesn't actually, just go and look at it. It doesn't look like a real person. It's not quite right. You couldn't jump like that. And he lands in a slight, because it's CGI. It's not real. AI can do that better. There are certain things, even with human movement, that are very difficult to do in CGI, very expensive, and it's been done. But I don't think it looks very good in many, many cases. We turn a blind eye to it, and they edit quickly, to kind of distract us. They're playing those tricks even in the most expensive movies. But they're not always, but because it understands physics. These models, they can actually do things like that better than we can do in CGI. Which I find very exciting. And then, I've seen many people experimenting with, family photographs and their own video footage, and creating incredibly interesting things that you just couldn't afford to do, or creatively you couldn't have done before. So hybrid is cool. And certainly, we talked at the beginning about costs. Let's say you want to get a film away, And, and we know this everywhere. If you're out there trying to pitch movies right now, what you know is that the movie that you were pitching at 10 million 2 years ago, no one's going to make it unless you say you can make it for 8 million or 6 million, right? So how do I get that movie away, right? Well, I figure out how to save 4 million by using AI, and then I get that movie away. That's a strategy. But you can see where that goes, because that's just, what's going to happen at that point to the future of the industry, because, it's soon it will be four. You need to make it for 4 million, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 10,000. And that is where it's going. But yeah, hybrid's cool. And I think there are some stories that must be told with real humans, of course. And so we must use real actors. We love real actors, of course. But I also, look, I don't know, have I said this already? But I'm a creator. I've made one feature film shot on anamorphic 35, completely old school, and I loved it. I love that experience. But the average number of feature films that a director gets to direct in their lifetime is one, right? It's one, and there's a very small number of directors in the world that get to create more than one, and vanishingly small that has ever made more than 5. To me, this is a crazy low number. I don't like that number. I hate that number. I have 10, 12 finished screen. I'm a writer director, so I've got loads of my own screenplays. I'm now looking at a world where I can make all 12, definitely, before I die. And to me, that's the most exciting thing in the world as a creator. I'm actually going to be able to create it. And I think that we do need to balance, the difference between the industry as it is today, where the vast majority of the wealth goes into the big companies, and the creators get, even the producer only gets 10% of a fee of the budget of a movie, 10%. Yeah, and quite often you never earn any more money from that film. To a world where if you could create for YouTube and build up a channel there and build up an audience who loves your work, you're going to keep, on advertising revenues, you're going to keep 50% of it. Right?
Yeah.
I would prefer a world where I keep 50% of what I create, then I get, I don't know, what you might earn from, making even a big Hollywood movie, like less than 10%.
Yeah.
Which world do you want? It's scarier because you got to find an audience. So let's get onto the distribution thing. Well, look, you got to follow the eyes. The eyes are moving away from Netflix and moving away from all traditional channels, and they're going to YouTube predominantly, also TikTok and other open platforms, and also new things, microdramas in romantasy on sites like Real Short. If people haven't seen it, REEL Short. It's made 9:16. It's shot pretty much on an iPhone. It's dreadfully acted, but there's loads of romantasy dramas there for that audience, the people that love that stuff. 2-minute episodes, but they call them movies. You can watch like 70 episodes and watch the whole movie in a oneer if you want. That site is making more productions per day than Hollywood by a long way. I think they're making 30 million a month. They're valued at 2 billion, one site, Real Short. And they're out. All made possible because the production costs are lower if you shoot on an iPhone and don't use the top Hollywood actors, right? So we know where that's going. We know that there's enormous opportunity outside of the legacy industry and amongst interesting audiences. One of the biggest success stories in US cinema in the last couple of years is actually Angel Studios that have been making movies for Christians. The mainstream industry hasn't been doing that. They found an enormous American audience that was interested in that. They had the number one, I think, film at the box office last year, or pretty much number 1, number 2. There's lots of audiences out there to go after. So, you need, if you want to be playing a role in the future of the industry as a creator, as someone who wants to make things, you need to be building up your audience in these new spaces. Just like, Mr. Beast did when he was 13 years old, and I don't know how old he is now, but it's taken him a while. But when he drops a piece of content, he gets more views, earns more money than the top show on Netflix. So you need to think about yourself or a team of you being the Mr. Beasts of the film and TV industry in the open world, along with many other people. So you've got to be really good at it. But that's the future. That's where you've got to do it. And even if you're working in the traditional industry, dare I say legacy industry, cool. Absolutely continue to do that, but start building yourself a following, an audience, a reputation. Start learning how to do that, and get a direct relationship with an audience, not a B2B relationship with an audience. And start working out how you're genuinely going to engage people, and earn 50% of what revenue you generate, not less than 10%.
So on that note, personal branding, I think, is absolutely crucial. I do think at the moment people trust personal brands so much more than companies. And this is why, if you can attach a personal brand to anything that you do, it's probably going to be more successful. For everyone who's currently entering the film industry, they might be students about to graduate, or they might be skipping university, going straight in, or that they might be doing a career change.
Uh-huh.
What are some of the key things, and this is my final question on this, like what should they be learning right now? Aside from, you mentioned one thing is actually learning AI, learning how to use AI. The second thing is building a personal brand. Is there anything else, like any key skills that you think they should be learning right now, which will still be useful in 3 years' time if AI is doing the majority of the work?
Look, I think you need to learn how to be authentic, how to create something that's actually worthwhile. I think it's quite difficult to actually do those two things. It takes a little bit of kind of deeper psychological introspection to kind of know who you really are, what stories you're born to make, to get outside of that bubble of what I think I ought to make versus what you should make. Ought to make for my career versus what you should make in terms of changing the world. I think you need to do that. I think you need to learn how to be authentic. And I think you need to learn that I suspect the world of the future. Some people get into filmmaking, film and TV, because they love the kind of aura of the industry. And they love the idea of one day getting an Oscar and being kind of famous. They might love the money too, not just the fame, but they love the money too. A lot of people dream of that, actually. I'm not saying it's wrong to dream of those things. It's up to you whether you think that's an ethical kind of thing to do with your life. But I'm not sure that they are ever the most important. I think the reasons you should be getting into filmmaking is because you love the craft. You have this makes you happy, and you're going to make other people happy, or audiences happy, or think, or change. And these are the real reasons why you should be doing it. And that means that you're going to have to accept, and I think this is true anyway, of a future that's far more competitive than it is today, far more distributed, far more atomized, that your likely goal is more to be a big fish in a smaller pond than probably you maybe have dreamt of previously. Because right now there's only a handful of directors that get to make the Hollywood movies. We could, you and I probably could only list 20, and there probably wouldn't be any more. There's a very big planet, and only 20 people get to do that. It's crazy, and some of them are making shockingly bad movies certainly in the superhero sphere. There's only 3 directors seemingly in that world, and they're all making terrible movies. But I think the ambition to be one of them, ignore it. It's not going to happen. The democratization of the world is too great. What you need to do is find who you truly are, be authentic, and find an audience for your stuff, and hold on to that audience, because that's you, and that's your world, and you're not being fake. It's people like you who love the kind of stuff that you want to create. Of course, you can chase an audience, make that bubble, that pool of attention bigger, and then make your fish self even bigger. Of course you can, but at some point it gets blunter, and at some point you've got to question: is it really what who I am? Is it? Am I just doing this for the money, or the fame, or the influence, or the power, or whatever else? So I think yeah, the lesson is really to be authentic and to not be too greedy.
Yeah.
I think that you've got to I think the AI world of the future, if we believe in the abundant skies, we're going to, we might not need to work and all of that. And so, my optimism is that that we can get to that world. The P doom for many is like 20%, so 80% chance that we're going to have this abundance. So let's operate like that as soon as we can, and do the right thing, make the right content. I'm completely with everyone about the ethical dangers of AI. I know this is all true, but what stands for me as the positive is that I can find a route to making content that I think is meaningful, and I can find an audience for that content. I don't have to go through an industry. I don't have to go through stupid executive producers giving me notes that are useless. I don't need to blunt it. I can just absolutely make something that I believe in, and hopefully others will too. And I think that's what we've got to do. I think the current industry encourages us not to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So we mustn't fall into that trap again.
No, I absolutely agree. And Simon, thank you so much for coming on and for sharing your point of view on this really, really important topic. And also just, giving all these advice to filmmakers who are perhaps feeling a little bit lost at the current state of the industry. So thank you so much for coming on and for sharing all of your insights.
Not at all. Anytime.